So maybe let's try to split it into like 3 layers. I think you touched on the first layer, like the top of the funnel, like the top of mind. I need to know what my competitors are doing. But I think this is very basic. And like you said, like it's very easy, relatively easy to know what my competitors are doing. But like one big threat could be, what about the unknowns, right? Like I don't know what I don't know.
Welcome to the Marketing Academy Podcast by G-CMO, where in every episode we sit down with a marketing expert to deep dive into a hot topic shaping the industry. I'm Yitzy Tannenbaum. Let's get started.
Welcome to the Marketing Academy Podcast by G-CMO. I'm Yitzy, and we have a great episode for you today. We have Roie Gortler from SimilarWeb. He's going to talk to us about competitive intelligence in the age of AI. AI has changed every industry and every kind of element of what we do, from PPC to content creation. But CI is kind of something that we all, I think, use AI for, but we don't really know how to do it. So Roie is going to introduce an interesting framework around competitive intelligence in the age of AI. Roie, welcome to Marketing Academy Podcast.
Thank you, Yitzy. Great to be here. Thank you for having me.
It'll be good fun. So before we jump into the juicy content, tell us a little bit about you. Who are you? Anything you want to share?
Yeah. So I've been a product marketing manager at SimilarWeb for the past year and a half now, supporting the core product that we have, Web Intelligence, which should be familiar for most of the marketeers in the crowd. It's been used by personas from PPC, SEO, marketing intelligence, etc. Before SimilarWeb, I did product marketing at another company in the HR space back in London, and then supporting some other smaller startups. But back in the days, I started my career in PR, being a spokesperson for a political party, and then spent about 3 years at Saatchi & Saatchi at the agency side. So I'm quite familiar with all the different parties and players in the market. And yeah, great to be here again.
Did you use data and analysis as a PR person?
Less, I have to be honest. In PR, it's more about meeting the people where they are, understanding their pain points in the day-to-day, and really crafting the messaging. So it's a really different dynamics and different space. I'm sure now, it's been quite a while since I did PR, but I'm sure they're much more advanced and implementing new tools since I've been there. But back then it was to be quite outdated.
I'm sure. And in this industry, things change quite rapidly. And I think this is why we're here, right? We want to understand how AI is affecting how we do competitive analysis. So maybe kind of take us back. What was competitive analysis before AI?
Yeah, I think, even back at Saatchi & Saatchi or Bauman, competitive intelligence was quite important for me. It was quite important for my customers, but it was different. It was basically knowing the basics. It's knowing who are the players, what are the main launches or investment that they have, understanding the type of audience that you have or the ones that you can untap. But it was really, really fundamental. It wasn't really implementing advanced tools. It wasn't really looking at holistic view and then combining all the different sources of information that you have. So CI is like, everyone can say that, they do CI, they do it on different levels and different ways. But I think in the last few years, especially with AI, taking like a more granular, advanced way to really look at competitive intelligence from all sides and all channels is really important. And of course, we will dive into that more. But I think, especially now with AI, it's important to really look at new upcoming threats that can really come much faster to take your business. So yeah, very long answer to your question, but I think like it's really important that you move along with the age of AI and embed new tools to your business.
Right. When I started out in product marketing, and I'm probably dating myself, the way I would do competitive intelligence was, I would look at my competitors' websites. I had 3 main competitors. I would look at their websites probably once or twice a week. And then I had like Google alerts that would update me when my competitors did anything. And that was good enough, right?
Yeah.
So why is it important? I think we kind of know, but how should marketers use the competitive information? It's not just curiosity, right? How should we take action based on our competitive analysis?
So maybe let's try to split it into like three layers. I think you touched on the first layer, like the top of the funnel, like the top of mind. I need to know what my competitors are doing, but I think this is very basic. And like you said, like it's very easy, relatively easy to know what my competitors are doing. But like one big threat could be, what about the unknowns, right? Like I don't know what I don't know. So it's really important to understand what could be a potential competitor that I'm not even look at, or maybe it could be like a frenemy or like an adjacent industry that is not taking my industry or my business today. But, in 6 months or in 2 weeks with AI can be like a new threat. So I would say that's like the second layer of competitive intelligence. And the third layer, which is sometimes the biggest miss or like the biggest blind spot, is not only what my competitors are doing, but like how are they performing? So, as a business, we know how we perform on a business level, how much traffic we get to our site, how much units we sold, whatever the business logic is. But often we don't know how our competitors are performing. So I'll give you an example. If I got 20% more traffic to my site last year, that's great. But if my two competitors got 50% more traffic, in other words, I'm losing traffic share. Or if you take the pandemic example, like if the travel industry is now under big threat and the audience and then potential consumers are leaving the industry, but my part of the pie that is shrinking is smaller than my competitor, in a way, I'm getting momentum in the market. So I would say like knowing what's happening in the market, understanding, new potential threats or players or competitors that I'm not even thinking of. And third, benchmark my performance. So it's not only know what they do, but like understand how they perform, and what are the growth drivers that help them to get to that impact or that success.
Right. I could see how a business decision will change drastically if in the holiday season, my sales grew by 10% and I usually grow by 30, then I maybe freak out. But if I look at my competition and I see they grew by 5% or 8 or 10 or 12, then you know what, maybe it makes more sense, right? It would influence business decisions.
Exactly. And it will give you like that deeper level insight of like not only that I'm performing to my KPIs or my business objective, I'm actually able to outperform my direct competitors. So this is like a really interesting insight. Or the opposite, if there is like a big threat, if we're losing business, if we're losing traffic, if our core audience is picking someone else, like you need to know this stuff. So it's not enough to know that Company A launched, a product. It's not enough to sign up for their blog and capture their recent release. It's really understand what's the impact of that release. Maybe it failed. Maybe something in their positioning, in the way they launch a product can help us understand how to launch something similar but better. Sometimes you don't need to be the first one that goes with a product to the market, but you can actually learn from that release. You can learn what worked well, what didn't work, so you can implement, reiterate, and improve. So, yeah, I think we touched on like the three ingredients, but it's really important that the two deeper levels are not being missed.
100%, right? Especially if you're in a very dynamic market, and you could really use that information in various ways and have real impacts on your business. But everything you mentioned seems very true to pre-AI. So talk to a little bit about what changed when everyone obviously is using AI, LLMs. I think individuals, definitely companies are starting to use agents. How does that change what we've been doing? Many of these companies have been around for 10, 20, maybe 50 years. They've been doing the same thing. And yes, they obviously evolved, selling more online and things along those lines. But why has AI changed the game?
So you talked about the company being there for a while, right? So I think that the most clear-cut example is the pace of change. Mm-hmm. A company like Lovable, or if we take a local example, Base44, they weren't a thing up until a year ago, and now they're taking like a huge part of the market. So being able to not only know the familiar faces and the familiar competitors that you're against, and really be agile in the age of AI, where I think it was like 8 months that took Lovable to jump from like 1 million to like 100 million ARR. So it's a clear-cut evidence for the ability of a small company now to become an existential threat to our business. So, the first sentence I think is like, you have to understand that the threats will be new, they will be surprising, and they will be they can take your business in a heartbeat. So it's really coming up with clear and then like quicker answers to that. I think it's also understanding that we are in a bit of a chaotic period, right? So everyone knows about the rise of LLMs. We see 80% increase for ChatGPT traffic in web. We see 300% increase for that over apps. But that's like a new channel, and we're still figuring out how the behavior in that channel is being understood, how we should track it. And, to add to the complexity, like we all know that AI is rising. That's not a surprise. But actually, based on our data, we see that in industries such as retail, beauty, fashion, like big industries, ChatGPT or LLMs as a percentage is still like less than 1% than traffic, than total traffic. So like, okay, this is big, this is rising, this is where my audience is going, but I can't think like other channels. I can't just throw away my entire strategy and go all in on AI. Like, you can pivot, and you need to pivot really, really quickly, but you also need to look at all bases, be on top of all the different channels, adding Gen AI and adding GEO to your, overarching look at the market, and keep being alert. Like, just recently we heard about ads being added to AI. So if you're a marketer, this is a new realm and new area that, and we can touch on that a bit later, but like, in short, everything moves faster. New players are rising much, much faster, and the competitive landscape is just getting more complex and more nuanced. And you can't drop the ball at like one channel in favor of just doing just AI.
Right. So I think, definitely the tech industry, there are industries that are moving at an extremely rapid pace, right? We've never seen companies get to these valuations and these number of users this quickly. But you mentioned like retail and like those industries, more traditional industries, the car dealerships. Has AI changed, in your opinion, the speed that they work? If I work for a clothing brand, how should I approach or think about AI? Is it changing the industry in the same way?
Absolutely. And, we took the perspective of the big player that one day discovers that there is like a new kid in the neighborhood, but like take the opposite. Like if you're just a team of 5-10 people with a cool new fashion brand, like you just mentioned, there's an opportunity. We can actually take market share and traffic from the big players, something that was almost unimaginable a few years ago. So now if we invest more effectively, if we understand how AI works, if we are able as a team to collaborate faster and be more dynamic, we're more agile. So we have an opportunity. So I would say yes, other brands have opportunity that in the past it was like David and Goliath, and it was almost no chance for them to win the battle. Yeah, and I think in some ways, like I've seen and I've worked with some of the more traditional, retailers or big organizations that, in the nature of things, they move slower. Sometimes it's much more challenging for them to adapt new tools. Not to even speak about, industries such as finance and financial services where there's so many limitations. And then it's just harder to move fast and to embed. Okay, I heard about this cool new AI tool. I want to embed it tomorrow. No, actually you can't. You need to go through this regulation and sign all the forms. So in some ways, there's some benefits to being small, agile, quick. So I don't know if I answer your question, but I think there's an opportunity for smaller brands in fashion, in retail, in beauty, definitely in the e-com space to embed AI faster.
Interesting. So I do want to leave here with a very clear framework of, in the age of AI, how do I approach competitive intelligence? So I'm a retailer. I kind of know who my competition are. I've been doing the same thing. I have my Google alerts. How should I adapt, or how should I build out a competitive intelligence framework that is relevant for today?
So I can share with you the framework that I've been sharing, with our customers, and something that I truly believe in. It's easier to say than done, but I would say those are like good step-by-step elements to like an effective competitive intelligence that can help, like you said, like a big retailer with different brands, different types of audiences and products, but also like for technology companies, etc. So you said I have my Google alerts, I'm all set. So no, first of all, really understand what is the competitive set that I'm against. Again, if I'm Nike, yes, I know about Adidas and New Balance, etc. But what about the new rising, fashion brand in France that, now it's local and cool, but might become a big thing in 5 years. So it's really expanding and like also well described and define what is the competitive set. Like we said before, sometimes an adjacent industry or like a partner that I used to have might be a competitor that I need to keep an eye on. So like step number one, define well your competitive set. I would say then you really need to dive deeper and perform and benchmark your performance to there. We talked about it shortly, but again, I know who am I against. Now it's time for me to go deeper and not only know about the recent PR and the recent launch, how did it perform? Now I can compare apples to apples to that performance. And I would even take another step and then take a more granular approach. Again, if I'm, Unilever, or if I'm Nike, if I'm the brand manager for Nike women's shoes, I don't care about Adidas performance as a whole, as a business, as a site. I care about the specific category, about the specific line of business that they invested in. So it's really important that, we talked about how CI and who is it for. I think it should be for everyone. It's not only for the CMO and the head of research to exchange some ideas and then some email alerts that they got from Google. It's really the responsibility and the accountability of every marketer, of every market research person, of every analyst to understand for their specific area of growth for the business, how can I make sure that I have all the information that can impact the growth or the business rationale of my area of the business. So I would say this is step 2 and 3, like how do you benchmark your performance and how you go a bit deeper in the segmentation and granularity of the competition. Then I would say it's understanding the drivers. Okay, I know that the Adidas women apparel segment grew by 10% faster than my area of the business. Why? Like those are the nuggets, the golden nuggets that can really help my head of research, my head of strategy to know where should we invest next year. So have they doubled down on AI? Have they implemented a new marketing approach? What did they do differently that drove that change? Is it like just one launch, one new segment, one new market that they penetrated that can really help me, make CI actionable? I think what I'm really worried, meeting many customers, that sometimes they take just the high level, that the surface level approach that we talked about. Like I have my Google alerts, I'm all set, I know everything I need to know. If you go down to that level of competitive intelligence, I think this is where you can really move the needle and help decision makers in your organization make CI actionable. And I think this is the biggest challenge very often. I would say then the next step, and just to recap, so we talked about, setting up the right competitive set, benchmark your performance, go deeper into segmentation. Then what I really recommend, and maybe it's not for every marketer, maybe it's more for like a market research departments, but understand the market dynamics and the consumer trends. So, again, this is something that Google Alerts won't give you, because if I'm, again, let's take the Nike Adidas example that I anchored to. I really, as a person that believes in CI and wants to embed that in the organization, it's not enough, again, that I look at the direct competitors. I need to look at my audience or the audience of the competitor and understand what they care about, how their preferences and their behavior is changing. I'll give you like a concrete example. If I'm in the travel industry and I know that staycation is on the rise, that's not a direct competitor, right? It's not like one brand that really believes in staycation, but we can assume that will support Airbnb rise, right? So as Marriott, as Hilton, I need to think about, if more and more consumers are price sensitive and they think about, I don't know, climate change, that they prefer to stay in their vacations locally. That's a big competitive threat. It's not like a classic CI that you track, but it's really, really important, again, that you look at the market perspective and the consumer trends, because often the most annoying thing for every marketer or like CMO is to see that your direct competitor spotted the trend that you missed. It will take you sometimes a few years, even with AI, to make sure that you understand this trend. I help many like FMCG organizations in the past, and those that understood vegan and like health ingredients and how important they are for customers early, they benefited from like growing that audience. So it's not always that easy to jump on that wagon and capture the competition. Then if we have to close the loop, I think it's there's no like way to avoid iteration. You talked about the only good thing I would say about the alerts that you get through the email is that they create a habit. They create like an iteration. You open your email every day. You're on top of the competition, or at least you feel like. I think that's a really, really important muscle that many organizations, as an organization, but also the individuals in that organization often create one analysis once a quarter for like a big presentation or when they have a big launch, so they will go deep. But the competition isn't going to rest. And it's really important that you will be on top of everything. And, we talked about it in our previous conversation. It's really important that not only, it's really important that that iteration will be effective and part of everyone's daily. So I'm not saying everyone in the organization do just CI. That's not reasonable. But I would say, especially with AI and especially, with the ease of creating alerts and then, gems and agents that will feed you with information, I think, yes, it's very important that at least part of your day of everyone in the organization, especially marketers, will have some kind of exercises that repeat with CI information. So I'll pause here because I gave you an extremely long answer, but I think those are the key steps to embed CI in your daily workflows.
Now, a lot of that makes sense. And I think many of our listeners are doing pieces of it in a unstructured way. So actually, you going through the steps, I think is very helpful just to like put a name to each of the things we do. But Roie, if you don't mind, let's kind of dissect it a little bit and let's break it out piece by piece to make sure we know how to do it. So the first step you mentioned was not only looking at the regular competition, but try to better understand those indirect competitors, the up and coming competitors. How would you recommend we approach that task? Because we all know our top 2 and 3 competitors, but how do I find that random 5 people in France who are building the clothing brand? How do I know that they exist to even look for them?
So first of all, obviously, like you need to rely on platforms with data that is fresh. Like you don't want to look at trends that happened 3 months ago. I'll take an example from my, from my history working with FMCG and like focus group. Like if you interview 10 people and you ask for their opinion, that's valuable. I'm not gonna say that it's not, but it's not moving at the same pace of, fresh data that is being updated daily, like how people behave online, how they consume information, how they make decisions, especially now with AI, like, the journey has changed, right? So if you're still tracking how people used to behave 10 months ago or 2 weeks ago, it's not going to give you the same level of information. So again, no easy answers there. I would say rely on a provider, on a vendor that gives you fresh data and granular enough to understand different locations. Like I know many of our customers are like global brands, so it's really important for them. Like you just said, like it's not enough to just understand the market that I'm in today. Maybe I want to expand. Maybe I want to find new growth opportunities. So obviously, I don't want to launch necessarily the same service to that country. I need to understand different keywords, different behaviors, different preferences, different consumption behaviors. So find the right, I would say, platform that gives you that level of information.
So I agree that data is king, and it definitely helps us marketers to see in real time what are people clicking, how are they using, etc. What I use qualitative for, focus groups and conversation interviews, is to explain the data trends, like why we're seeing this behavior, right? Usually that's where qualitative, and those of us who've done interviews or focus groups, I would highly recommend to complement the data as well.
Agreed. That's a great point. And then I think sometimes those focus group will give you insight about stuff that you're not even aware of, right? So yeah, and it's also great to like validate some ideas that you have or trends. So totally agree. I'm not neglecting that idea.
Okay, so I found who my competitors are, the main ones, the kind of the periphery, like up and coming. Stage 2 is what?
Stage 2 is really to understand your performance and your against the competition. So again, we talked about it. We took the example of the pandemic. There's so many other examples, but it's really important that, for example, I give you like a real example that I looked at in some of our analysis recently. Like in the UK, there is a very, very famous company, Specsavers. They're like opticians. They're around every corner in Oxford and then across London. Everyone knows them, and they have good digital footprint. So they know who are their direct competitors. But actually, when they start looking at trends across web and Gen AI together, then they realize that in Gen AI traffic, they're actually losing traffic to a new upcomer from Boots, which is like a big pharmaceutical company in the UK. So that wasn't in the cards. It wasn't like a new shop that they could look at going through the street. It was something that they needed to really understand when they benchmark their performance. So they could actually see that while their traffic looks fine and most of the legacy channels are working just according to the book and the CMO requirement for that quarter, actually in a new channel, in a new rising arena, they were losing audience. They were losing people that are after different kind of search. We haven't talked about it as much, but like in Gen AI now, people behave differently. They look differently. We talked about the rise of traffic from Gen AI, but it's also a different behavior.
Right. So it makes sense. Once I understand the field I'm playing in, now I need to understand where do I stand.
Exactly.
And it's true both from a data perspective, but I think it's also true from a USP, unique selling point perspective. How is my story unique? How does my traffic and my data and how do I compare to others? How am I perceiving the market, right? Because that would also influence how I price, how I want to go out there, what channels do I want to focus on. So understanding where I stand would be, it makes a ton of sense for step 2. Step 3.
So step 3 is understanding basically why. You talked about it in the focus group example of like
right.
giving you the context of different performance. So I would say it's really understand, okay, we compared the right performance across different channels. Now I want to understand, this is the actionability part of how can I take it one step further. So I'll give you an example. We looked at leading fashion brands globally, such as, Uniqlo and Zara and stuff like that. And you can, when you dive into the granularity of understanding the actual segments that drive the growth of a company, that's when a CMO, that's when a product marketer, that's when like a brand manager can make a plan. Like it's not enough to know that, I don't know, Zara is outperforming me by 20%. But when I know that they launch a new segment of a website that is focusing on clothing for the summer or something a bit more niche, that's where head of strategy, product development can actually say, okay, guys, tomorrow morning, we need to start developing our range of product for that segment of the business. So this is like the actionable part that I'm really, really encourage people to think about. So, if we take like just to recap, it's not like just comparing brand versus brand. It's not site versus site. It's like diving deeper and have the apples to apples comparison that can help me come up with a strategy.
Right. So it's once I understand who I am, I then can start comparing and create actionable like insights and what am I going to do with the information, with the comparison.
And it's also, I know you're a big fan of embedding CI across the organization. So it's also how can you bring more people to the conversation? It's not just CMO, head of research, product development sitting and agreeing on stuff. It's like, okay, guys, we need all the 10 brand managers, all the category, head of categories to be in this conversation to understand what they can do differently next quarter. And once they believe in this data, in these insights, they become advocates of this information. And then it's like a vicious circle that you can encourage more and more people in the organization to demand more CI, to ask for, higher quality of CI. So, once you prove, I'm speaking selfishly as a product marketer of CI, but like once you show the value of CI insights to more stakeholders, they demand more and they want more granularity. So it's like a way to also expand the importance of it.
From your experience, do you have any good tips on, these product leads are so busy, right? And yes, and like, I'll tell you an experience that I had where I did really deep research. I sent to the product leads and they're like, give me the top 3-4 bullets. So, and I respect that. I understand that. Like there's so much information out there. Do you have any guidance on how do I bring everyone in?
It's a good question. I don't think I found like the perfect result. I can just share a few tips. I would say one is to literally bring everyone together into like a forum. So instead of like sending an email, praying that someone will open your deck that you invested so much time in, I think it's when you bring people together with different perspectives. So I think, you're very, very experienced in product marketing. Sometimes you get to an organization where literally there's no one from product and sales or from GTM speaking to each other. And when you have that context of competitive intelligence, I think that's like a very painful area that everyone wants to discuss with each other. So suddenly the head of PM, maybe they heard enough from you, but when they hear from GTM that they just lost a deal because, not because of feature, but because of a different experience, lack of value or lack of perceived value, I think this is like one tip that I would give, just bring everyone together. And I think eventually, I think you probably say the same thing. You don't want to do like a feature to feature comparison. That's like, it's tiring. It's not really moving the needles. Yes, for one customer, that will be the deal breaker and you can deliver that feature for them. But I think when I saw like really excitement for PMs, seeing like new competitive intelligence, it was when you discover something new, right? When there was like a new value offering, when there was something that was really different than how we think about our value. And actually, sometimes they're really interested in product marketing. Like they're really interested to hear about the company positioning very differently, the product that you and the PM worked on together. So I would say bring everyone together, give them like real value, not like tiring feature comparison. And 3, give them your perspective. Like, why do you think it's interesting?
I love that, and I couldn't agree more. Maybe I would just add also simplicity. I think is a big piece. Okay, so I brought everyone together. I have the actionable insights. People are going to use my CI to influence whatever their domain is. What now?
Well, now it's time to really match CI to the business goals. So again, we don't want to create endless decks that live there until the next PMM starts a new project next quarter and does the exact same thing. We want to match the CI to our business objective. So if we want to launch a new product, okay, great. How do we do that? How did my competitor did that? How did they think about the distribution channels? Like one of the very interesting, surprising insight that we share with customers is, okay, yes, we know that, Sephora is investing in cosmetics, but when we actually dive to the page level and see what is the page, what is the messaging, what is the actual content that really drove success, that's like really, really interesting. So it's not like it's moving again from like the high level titles of like, okay, they did A, how did they do that? What was the impact? So I think like that's point number 1. And if we think about more strategically, is again, I know what are the CEO and the CMO priorities for next quarter, for H1, H2, whatever. How can I make sure that CI is like weaved into those plans? How can I help understanding the market? How can I help them finding new geos, new audiences, right? Like take SEO from the tactical, informational, surface level to like, okay, actionable. And I'm not going to pretend that CI is the whole shebang and it's like the complete strategy. I think it's like an important ingredient that adds a lot of value and sometimes really sharpen our strategy. So maybe we know what we're going to launch. Maybe we know what is the demographic, and it's just like what is the right positioning that will be different from what our competitors did.
I think on paper, a lot of marketers won't agree, or a lot of business leaders will say, no, we just do our own thing. We don't care about our competition. But at the end of the day, it is a dance, and we're all dancing on the same floor in a way. And if our competitor made this move, we will then maybe even subconsciously, we will then react in a certain way. And I do agree, and I very much accept that is super important, right? How does the CI turn into actionable business goals, right? If our competitor did X, Y, Z around the holidays or around some kind of launch, or they're sponsoring the World Cup or Olympics or whatever it is, what does this mean for me? And how, maybe, you know what, maybe the decision is also nothing, but how is that part of the conversation? And then first is understanding just the market, direct competitors, and kind of the smaller competitors. Then I want to understand where I sit within that. I then want to make sure that that information that I learned is kind of touches anyone that it should. I then want to take that information and with those stakeholders turn it into real business goals. And the final one is making sure that it's continuous, right? If I recall.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would just add that one like key ingredient is also looking at the both the bigger picture of the market and the underlying like macro trend and micro trend, and how to mix them all together. And, you know, to a previous question about how to get a PM excited, how to get everyone's attention, sometimes the hidden trends, you know, that people don't think about are like the very surprising business context that can give you a big edge. One example that I really like to go back to is like, okay, let's take a real example. You know, I'm sure someone in your circle of friends or family maybe drop drinking alcohol or like reduce the consumption, right? So it's part of like a health trend. There's like dry Jan that happens in other places of the world. But can you put a number? Like, do you know how dramatic is this trend? This is not something that, you know, if you go back to the focus group, so maybe 1 out of 10 people will say, yes, I reduced the consumption or I dropped it completely. But actually tracking that behavior and going back to that PM and saying, you know, we're focusing on this line of beverages, but did you know that the demographic of, 18 to 25 started the dry Jan in 50% more than last year? Like, that's a dramatic insight that is not about one competitor, but maybe one of your competitors, and maybe going back to the beginning of the conversation, maybe one small niche brand in the US now creates like very fine, crafty, non-alcoholic drinks. They might be taking your business or the next generation of consumers. So again, very, I'll go back to your question, but I think like to add to that complexity of the framework, it's really understanding the underlying trends that are happening in the market.
No, I very much agree with that, is not looking at stereotypes, more of archetypes, right? So the example I love giving is there's some kind of consensus that only the majority of people, of gamers, are men, right? And if you look at the data, it's like 52-48, although to the men, but it's almost 50-50. And I think we do this very often. We'll say, you know, children today don't read books, or people that live in this certain area don't play pickleball, or I would hate to say this, but certain types of races or cultures, and we jump to conclusions. I think there's no place for that just in general society, but even as a business, if you jump to a conclusion based on your gut reaction or what you know, you'll often be surprised. And I do agree, like, you need to back up. You know, it could be a starting point if you do think that all these type of people act in a certain way. You know, you could check that, even in the B2B world, right? All CISOs don't have whatever, or your CFOs don't know how to use blah, blah, blah tool.
Yeah.
Any type of generalization, I think, should be checked, evaluated, backed by data, by conversations. So I'm a big fan of that.
I love this point. And just to add, I think it's also, if you have like a narrow mind, it's also contradicting everything we talked about AI, right? If you're not open to new channels, new threats, evolving markets, if you stick to that one playbook that someone 10 years ago invented, it really challenging your ability to be flexible, your ability to adapt to changes in the market.
Right. Flexibility is definitely a key here. Okay. So just, I want to sum things up. You'll tell me how I did. Okay. So I go into a business and I want to start off a CI program. I'll probably start out with just understanding the market, not only my core competitors, but kind of the smaller ones. Is this a place where I would start looking at trends, or would that come it's like stage 4?
It really depends on the flow. There's not like one playbook. Sometimes it starts with a new surprising trend, and then you discover the market. But yeah, I would say more often it's exactly what you said.
Okay, so I found out the industry. I then want to figure out where I stand with the others. I want to bring the various stakeholders in. I want to take the CI outcomes and turn it into real business goals. And I want to continue doing this flow. This is ongoing. It can't be a point in time. Hey, I did this once a quarter right before SKO, and it's very static because the market is dynamic. I'm always evolving, always growing, revisiting, and fixing. It sounds like a something we can do, a framework that makes sense. How'd I do?
Excellent.
Yes.
We're looking for PMMs at SimilarWeb if you want to apply.
I'm talented. I don't think I know quite a few, and you guys get the top tier, so I'm not convinced. Before we go, Roie, I know you guys are hosting an event at SimilarWeb. Can you talk a little bit about what that event is and who should attend?
Yeah, so on June 29th, we are going to host our AI Day at the SimilarWeb headquarters. It's open for all the G-CMO community, of course. We really recommend marketers, PMMs, head of strategy to come to learn a lot about the evolving AI scape, about the landscape of ads in AI, the rise of ChatGPT, and how to really understand the evolving competitive landscape for every business today. So I hope to see you there. I hope to see people from G-CMO. So again, June 29th, reach out to me or find the registration details. Hope to see you there.
Sounds good. Look, I think hopefully this episode was part 1 of the conversation, and then it sounds like that day will be part 2. Roie, thank you so much. Before I go, and I want to thank you for being here, I want to thank Rotem Simon, who is our producer who works the magic behind the scenes. I want to thank our home for today, Google for Startups. If you have a startup and you're looking for a place to get it off the ground, get tools, mentorship, Google for Startups is actually a really good place to host you and help you build things from the ground up. If you have any questions, comments, please send it our way. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, etc. Always helps us. And we'll see you at the next one. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Yitzy. Thanks for having me.